It used to be that when a tool was working, you could actually like see the work happening.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like a massive printing press or something.
Right, exactly. Or, think of the engine of a freight train. If a machine was doing something highly complex, it was loud, it took up massive amounts of physical space, and the sheer effort of the task was, it was completely visible in all those moving parts.
Yeah, the output was directly tied to the physical friction you could observe. I
Yeah.
mean, we've sort of spent the last couple of centuries culturally wired to equate power with physical mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. But today's deep dive, we're looking at a foundational text called Introduction to AI, and it really forces us to confront a completely different paradigm.
It really does. It flips everything upside down.
It does. And, whether you are prepping for a meeting, trying to catch up on tech trends, or just insanely curious, you are in the right place today.
Hmm.
Because the most powerful engine on the planet right now makes absolutely no sound. It has zero moving parts, and it's likely sitting silently in your pocket right now.
Just completely invisible.
Right. So the question we are tackling today is, how does a silent machine with no physical footprint manage to outdiagnose a doctor with 30 years of clinical experience or, completely rewire how global logistics operate?
Well, it requires a total shift in how we understand the very concept of work. The premise laid out in our source material defines this technology specifically as, and I'm quoting the idea here, allowing computers to think, learn, and make decisions like humans.
Which is a huge claim.
Right. But to really grasp what that means, we have to look past the shiny interface and, understand the underlying mechanics of that process because it's not magic.
Okay, let's actually immediately pause on that word, thinking, because the overview uses it, but if you are listening to this, you likely already know we aren't talking about sentience here.
No, not at all.
Right. Your phone hasn't developed a tiny digital consciousness. So I kind of want to push back on the shorthand the source is using. Is it actually making a decision, or is it just processing data so fast that it creates a really highly convincing illusion of human cognition?
I mean, it is entirely the latter. And the material actually maps out that distinction if we look at the mechanics it highlights. The core advantage of AI isn't some emergent consciousness.
Right.
It's the ability to analyze staggering volumes of data in like fractions of a second. So when we say it thinks, what we actually mean is that it runs statistical probabilities at a scale the human brain literally cannot comprehend.
Give me a tangible way to visualize that, because analyzing data is one of those phrases that is just, lost all meaning. It's just corporate speak now.
Oh, 100%. Okay. Think of a human trying to predict an earthquake by just looking at the surface of the ground. We might notice a crack forming or, feel a slight rumble.
You sure?
That's human observation.
Yeah.
Now, imagine a seismograph connected to millions of sensors across the entire tectonic plate.
Wow, okay.
And it's simultaneously measuring microscopic vibrations, temperature changes, and electromagnetic shifts every single millisecond.
Yeah.
The AI isn't thinking about the earthquake. It's identifying a complex mathematical pattern in that massive sea of data that always precedes a rupture.
Okay, that makes the concept of decision-making much clearer. A human decides to act based on intuition and, past experience.
Exactly.
But the AI arrives at the exact same action by calculating the highest probability of success based on a historical data set of billions of similar scenarios.
Right.
So it's mirroring the result of human thought,
Yes.
but the mechanism getting there is purely statistical matching.
And that is exactly why it is such a disruptive force for productivity,
Yeah.
which, is the first major ripple effect the text outlines.
Yeah.
When you strip away the manual labor of trying to manually correlate all that data, you just eliminate the bottleneck of human processing speed.
Which fundamentally changes the role of the human worker, right? I mean, if I have a system that can instantly cross-reference every contract my company has ever signed
Well, yeah.
and identify the legal liabilities and summarize the risk in 3 bullet points, the AI looks like a genius lawyer. But really, it's just the ultimate sorting algorithm.
Exactly. It elevates the human from being a data gatherer to a purely strategic operator. The text emphasizes that this drastically increases productivity by automating repetitive tasks.
Right, the grunt work.
Yeah, exactly. You are no longer spending 40 hours looking for the pattern. The pattern is just handed to you on Monday morning, and you spend your 40 hours figuring out what to actually do about it.
Man, if we take that capability, that hyper-fast mapping of invisible patterns, and apply it to major societal systems, the implications get massive very quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
And our overview focuses heavily on 2 sectors that are just practically drowning in data, which are education and healthcare. Let's start with education because, the traditional model has always seemed to fundamentally struggle with the concept of scale.
Yeah, education is like the classic example of an economy of scale forcing a huge compromise.
Hmm.
Historically, you have one teacher in a room with 30 students,
Right.
and that teacher cannot possibly map the individual cognitive architecture of 30 different minds simultaneously. It's impossible. So they have to teach to the median average of the room.
It's a total one-size-fits-all model. You read chapter 4, you take the quiz on Friday. If you failed, well, it's because you didn't study hard enough.
Exactly.
But the text frames AI as shifting this toward, quote, personalized learning experiences. Mechanically, how is an algorithm acting as a tutor? It's not just like giving the student the answers, right?
No, no, it's actually reverse engineering the student's learning process.
Yeah.
When a student interacts with an AI-driven educational platform, the system isn't just looking at whether they got the final answer right or wrong.
What else is it looking at?
It's analyzing the time it took them to answer, the specific type of errors they are making, the sequence of their logic, and it's comparing all of that against millions of other students in real time.
Wow, so it's finding the cluster of mistakes. So if I'm struggling with calculus, the AI might realize I don't actually have a problem with the calculus concepts at all.
Right? It traces the error back.
And it realizes I have a fundamental misunderstanding of an algebra rule from 3 years ago that just keeps tripping me up.
Exactly that. It identifies the exact point of cognitive failure and dynamically adjusts the lesson plan on the fly to patch that specific blind spot. The text notes students are using these tools to understand complex topics and improve skills because, frankly, the AI provides the kind of micro-adjustments a human teacher simply doesn't have the bandwidth to offer.
I mean, it transforms the textbook from a static repository of facts into an interactive dialogue. Historically, hyper-personalized attention like that was a luxury only the ultra-wealthy could afford.
Oh, yeah. You had to hire a world-class private tutor.
Right. But now we are looking at the democratization of hyper-personalization. When the marginal cost of mapping a student's learning curve drops to near zero, every single student gets the equivalent of a dedicated world-class tutor who never gets tired.
And never loses patience.
Yeah, never loses patience. But okay, if we take that exact same conceptual framework, the ability to map microscopic, invisible patterns in massive data sets, and we move it from the classroom to the hospital.
The stakes go way up.
Yeah, the stakes instantly jump from passing a midterm to literal life and death. The section of the text covering healthcare is arguably the most staggering part of this entire overview.
I agree. Because healthcare is fundamentally an information processing discipline. I mean, think about it. A doctor assesses symptoms, references medical history, and matches that against clinical knowledge to determine a diagnosis.
Right.
The bottleneck has always been human memory and biological fatigue.
Right, because no matter how brilliant an oncologist is, they cannot physically read the thousands of medical journal articles published every single month. They can only hold a certain number of patient histories in their head.
And this is where the AI steps in. Not to replace the doctor's intuition, but to augment their biological limits. The text points out that AI is helping doctors detect diseases significantly earlier. Let's look at how that actually happens with something like a medical scan.
Right, because an AI isn't looking at an MRI the way I look at a photograph. I mean, it doesn't have eyes, so what is it actually doing?
So to a human doctor, an X-ray or an MRI is a visual image, right? They're looking for shadows, asymmetries, visual anomalies.
Sure.
But to an AI, that scan is a grid of millions of numerical values representing tissue density. The AI is comparing those millions of numbers against a database of tens of millions of historical scans in seconds.
It's looking for the statistical tremor before the earthquake.
Precisely. It calculates the probability that a specific microscopic cluster of pixels, which by the way might be completely invisible to the human eye, it calculates how that cluster deviates from the baseline of healthy tissue in a way that correlates with early-stage cancer. It can flag an area of concern months or even years before a human radiologist could spot the physical manifestation of the tumor.
That shift from reactive to proactive is massive. The traditional model of medicine is essentially just waiting until a system fails. You wait until you feel sick, then you go to the doctor to figure out why.
Exactly.
AI gives us the capability to predict the failure before the symptom even arrives.
And that predictive capability extends into how we actually treat the disease once we find it. The source highlights AI's role in developing new medicines, which addresses another massive bottleneck in healthcare, the sheer time it takes to discover a viable drug.
Yeah, because the old model of drug discovery is basically highly educated trial and error, right? You synthesize a compound in a lab, test it on a petri dish, see what happens, tweak the formula, and try again.
It takes a decade.
And billions of dollars just to get a single drug to market.
Right, because physical testing in a wet lab is incredibly slow. But what if you don't have to physically mix the chemicals? AI allows scientists to digitally simulate the molecular structure of a disease and then simulate millions of chemical compounds interacting with it.
So it's running the trial and error in a digital environment at the speed of computation.
Yes, it models the physics and the chemistry of the molecules to predict which ones will bind effectively to a virus or a cancer cell.
That's incredible.
Right. Out of 10 million possible compounds, the AI can narrow it down to the top 50 candidates that actually have a mathematical probability of working. Then, and only then, the human scientists take those 50 into the physical lab. It compresses years of preliminary research into literally days.
That just completely redefines the boundaries of medical research. But, looking at these advancements in education and healthcare, it naturally leads to the massive structural question about our economy.
Oh, absolutely.
If we are injecting this invisible, hyper-efficient engine into every single system, we have to talk about the ripple effect on human beings.
Yeah, the socioeconomic friction points are probably the most hotly debated aspect of this technology right now. I mean, how do you integrate a system that can outprocess human workers without just completely destabilizing the workforce?
Exactly. And our overview text dives into the business landscape, noting that companies are using AI to manage operations, improve customer service, create innovative products. But honestly, I have to stop and challenge the optimism of the source material here.
Okay, let's hear the skepticism. What are you thinking?
Well, the text asserts that AI is creating new career opportunities in technology, research, and digital industries. But let's just do the math for a second. If an AI can instantly audit a company's financials, run its global supply chain, handle like 80% of its customer service inquiries, and generate marketing copy.
That's a lot of jobs.
Right. The new jobs it creates in server maintenance or prompt engineering cannot possibly employ the thousands of white-collar workers it just displaced. Are we just optimizing ourselves out of the equation entirely?
The displacement anxiety is entirely valid.
Hmm.
And the mathematical trade-off you were pointing out is arguably the defining economic challenge of this decade.
Right.
But the text doesn't suggest a simple one-to-one replacement of old jobs with new tech jobs. It points to a much more fundamental transformation in what a human job actually is.
Okay, so what does a human actually do when the machine can process all the information?
We move up the value chain. The source specifically states that human creativity, ethics, and decision-making remain crucial because technology works best when it supports human intelligence, rather than acting completely autonomously. Let's break that down practically. Think about a business trying to launch a new product.
Okay, the AI can analyze consumer data to find a gap in the market. It can design the logistics network to manufacture the product cheaply.
Yeah, it can do all the mechanical optimization. But the AI doesn't know what it feels like to be a human being.
That's true.
It doesn't understand the cultural zeitgeist or the emotional resonance of a brand or the actual joy a product brings. It lacks the why.
So the AI is a brilliant optimizer of variables, but it doesn't choose which variables actually matter.
That is exactly the distinction. Think about it this way. An AI running a hospital's operations might conclude that the most mathematically efficient way to save money is to turn off the heating in patient rooms and fire all the nursing staff.
Jeez.
Right. Mathematically, it has achieved the goal of cost reduction perfectly.
But it takes a human to step in and say, no, patient comfort and human dignity are the actual priorities, and your optimization is failing our mission.
Exactly. And this is why the source so heavily emphasizes the responsible use of AI and the enduring need for human decision-making. The AI is a compass. It can instantly point you to true north.
Right.
But it cannot tell you if true north is a place you actually want to go. Humans are required to choose the destination, to provide the cultural, emotional, and practical context.
It's a partnership of capabilities. The machine handles the probability, and the human handles the purpose. We are outsourcing the raw computational effort so that we can focus entirely on the executive, creative, and strategic application of that data.
Which is why the text concludes with the idea that AI is not replacing the future, but rather helping us build it. The workers who face the highest risk of displacement aren't necessarily competing against AI.
Who are they competing against?
They are competing against other human workers who have learned how to use AI effectively.
Ah, I see. So it's a tool transition, much like the transition from the typewriter to the personal computer, just on an exponentially faster timeline.
Exactly. And with a vastly more capable tool, the integration phase is going to require massive adaptation, but the ultimate end state, outlined in the overview, is one of profound augmentation. It raises the baseline of what a single human being is capable of achieving.
Which really brings us full circle on this deep dive. I mean, we started by looking for the gears of this massive new engine, only to realize the real power lies in its invisibility, its ability to map statistical probabilities at a scale that just looks like magic to the human eye.
Yeah, and we tracked how that invisible processing power is dismantling the bottleneck of scale in education,
Hmm.
creating a paradigm where hyper-personalized learning is suddenly accessible to anyone.
And we saw how it translates scans into data to spot biological failures long before they manifest physically, and how it turns the slow physical trial and error of drug discovery into rapid digital simulation.
And finally, we confronted the tension of automation, realizing that while AI is the ultimate optimizer, it operates in a total vacuum of meaning. It absolutely relies on human architects to provide the vision, the ethics, and the cultural context.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you to chew on as we wrap up today's deep dive. For the entirety of human history, intelligence has largely been measured by a person's ability to retain information and find the right answers. We tested each other on our ability to recall facts and solve equations.
Yeah, the premium was always on the retrieval of knowledge.
But today, you have an invisible engine in your pocket that has already memorized every medical journal, every legal code, and every historical text, and it can retrieve the correct answer in milliseconds.
It's wild to think about.
It is. If the machine is infinitely better at finding the answers, then perhaps the definition of human intelligence is about to fundamentally change. Moving forward into this partnership, the most valuable, uniquely human skill won't be finding the answer anymore. The real skill of the future will be mastering how to ask the right questions.